gentlemen, good morning all, and we welcome you to today's very important event. It is the webinar of the Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry in partnership with Aelex partners. Monsieur et Madame, bienvenue au webinaire de la Chambre de commerce et d'industrie franco-nigérienne en partenariat avec Aelex partners, and we're delighted to have all of us here this morning. We see a great number of participants already this morning. We believe there's going to be an engaging discourse on the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020. We also, our panelists and our speakers, of course, our guest is already here this morning to speak to us as we get set to kick off today's event. So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand over to the Consul General of France in Nigeria, Madame la Consul General, Madame Laurent Momihan. She will be giving us the welcome address. Madame Consul General, please.
Merci beaucoup, Moses. Thank you so much, Moses. Good morning, everyone. The Executive Secretary and CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, Chairman Board of Directors of the Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, ladies and gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen connected online this morning, welcome everyone. I indeed welcome you to this very important business webinar meeting of the Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry that focuses on the Company and Allied Matters Act, the Cama 2020, that was recently signed into law by the President of Nigeria. While I say that, I hope that we are keeping safe in these times. Speaking in this webinar this morning simply shows how much we do need to continue to apply social distance measures and thus adhering to the instructions of the NCDC as they strive towards flattening the curve. And a lot has been done by the federal government of Nigeria and by Lagos State already from the very beginning. For all governments today, the big challenge is really to try and find the right, the real challenge is really to try and find the right balance between fighting against the pandemic while preserving economic capacities. It is also a time to show solidarity. This is why French companies in Nigeria, like their Nigerian counterparts, have provided support through different donations, from hydroalcoholic gel to medical equipment, ambulances, masks, and food. But let me come to the focus of today's webinar and commend the hard work done by the federal government of Nigeria through very active agencies like the NIPC, led by the keynote speaker today, the Ease of Doing Business Council, and the lawmakers to bring this new Cama Act into reality. This new act makes a strong case for the ease of doing business drive of Nigeria, while making issues of business governance less complex. And interestingly, France shares the same concern, as 3 major laws have been passed in France during the last 2 years to make company administration and company law simpler, thus promoting company reform and growth. I therefore wish and believe that Cama will help further strengthen the relationship between France and Nigeria while promoting foreign direct investment. What French and more generally foreign companies are carefully looking at before choosing a new destination country is freedom of trade and industry, especially in foreign trade, transparency and respect of contracts and intellectual property, stability and predictability of the business environment, as well as efficient transport facilities. In an improved business environment, French companies are ready to further invest in Nigeria and bring their know-how so the country can develop its own industry and diversify its own economy and resources. So let me thank the Franco-Nigerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry for putting together this very important online event in partnership with Aelex partners. I must say that the Chamber has not relented in its information dissemination objective, irrespective of the current realities. And I do wish to commend them on this. Thank you, Moses. Thank you to all the team. Thanks again to all of you for participating in this webinar this morning. And we are now all looking forward to an engaging session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame la Consul General. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for that beautiful welcome address. And we'll go straight to the issues we have to deal with today. I can see that we have Mrs. Yewande Sadiku already is connected to us, our keynote speaker this morning. Thank you very much, Mrs. Yewande, for joining us this morning. Right. So it's an important discourse, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of people connected with us on this platform, and the event is also live on Facebook, and we have a great number of people already sending in their comments. We will not be able to take them now until it's time to have our discussion. So on the 7th of August 2020, ladies and gentlemen, President Muhammadu Buhari assented the Company and Allied Matters Act, Cama 2020. This act repeals and replaces the 30-year-old Company and Allied Matters Act 1990, today described as a repealed act. The newly enacted act introduces measures to ensure efficiency in the registration and regulations of businesses, reduce the compliance burden of small and medium enterprises, SMEs, enhance transparency, and overall, promotes a more friendly business climate. According to analysts, the Cama 2020 is undeniably a progressive development in the Nigerian business and economic landscape, and a boost to the ease of doing business campaign of the government, like the Consul General has rightly mentioned. Is this actually true? The Act is a very robust document. It speaks to different aims: regulations, filing of returns, corporate governance, tax, and the rest of them. That is why today we have our panelists that will be dishing out relevant information on various aspects of the Act. Mrs. Yewande Sadiku will be leading the conversation this morning, accompanied by Mr. Davison Otsuru, which is a partner over at Aelex, Mrs. Agbolo Ajer Atinuke, Senior Manager, Tax Department, Deloitte & Touche, Mr. Michael Ango, which is the Associate Director, Anderson Tax Nigeria, and then we have Mr. Peter Owofia, which is the Partner, Tax and Regulatory Service, Mazars, Nigeria. So there are different aspects they will be taking for this act, and because the information are going to be out there so much, I will not want to waste so much of our time. I will quickly introduce Mrs. Yewande Sadiku, which is the CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council. Nigerian Investment Promotion Council is Nigerian's foremost investment promotion agency, and she has been leading this agency since October 2016. She has over 23 years in the banking sector. And of course, we know her already. She's a very, very popular person. I've been speaking to policies as far as promoting foreign direct investment in Nigeria. Even the NIPC, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, also comes up with publications on, I think they have the compendium of incentives for promoting foreign direct investment here in Nigeria. So without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, I will hand over to Ms. Yewande Sadiku, the MD/CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council. Ms. Sadiku, please. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and good morning. I'm going to start with a number of corrections. My name is Miss Yewande Sadiku, not Mrs., and the agency that I work for is Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. It's a commission, not a council. Thank you very much for the kind invitation to speak at this event. I will start with a conversation about why we believe Nigeria remains a strategic investment location and why the reform of Cama is material to supporting Nigeria's investment ambitions. We all know that Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa. It is expected to remain as such based on projections by people who know better until 2050. We all know that Nigeria has the largest population in Africa currently and is projected to be the third largest economy and have the third largest population in the world in 2050. We know that Nigeria has youth on its side. So it's not just a question of having a large population, it's a question of having a large youthful population. The median age in Nigeria is about 18 and a half years, which compares very favorably with the median age in France, which is in the late 30s. Nigeria is an ideal location for taking advantage of the opportunities that the AfCFTA represents. Nigeria is more ready than most African economies to leverage on the opportunities that agreement, that area, the largest free trade area in the world, represents for all. Participating in Nigeria means that investors who want to access the African continent can, within a 6-hour radius, get to all parts of Africa. I like to say that if you think of the African continent as a gun, if you hold the bottom of the continent, it's a short-barreled gun. If you hold the top of the continent, it's a long-barreled gun. But whether you hold the top or the bottom, Nigeria sits where she will be as the trigger, for development on the continent. And companies have found that dominating in Nigeria gives them the capacity to travel across the continent. Nigeria's manufacturing value add in the context of the AfCFTA is more than 7 times the average of the top 20 economies in Africa. And many Nigerian companies have already grown out of Nigeria, beyond our borders. The first example I'd like to give of that is United Bank for Africa, UBA, which now has a presence in 20 African countries. The Dangote Group is present in 12. GT Bank is present in 10. Globacom is present in 5. InterSwitch is present in 3 countries. And a relatively small fintech company, but big in fintech terms, Paga, is present in 2. If we count companies that started in Nigeria and grew out of Nigeria, even though they carry a different nationality now, then I would count Olam, which is present now in 60 countries. They demonstrate for all the possibility that starting in Nigeria, taking advantage of the Nigerian market represents. Never mind all of this though, investors continue to tell us about the challenges of doing business in Nigeria. And it is the business environment in a broad brush, everything from corruption to security to the non-predictability sometimes of approvals from governments, the frequency of policy changes, the state of the roads. The Nigerian government heard this and work had commenced on the reform of the business environment, which led to the president delegating responsibility for that to none other than the vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, to lead the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council. And in 4 out of the last 5 years, Nigeria has recorded improvements in its doing business ranking. In the last 2 years, Nigeria has been ranked as one of the top 10 reformers in the business environment globally. So we understand that work is required in improving Nigeria's business environment, in making it more friendly and easier for investors to access the Nigerian market. And I'll speak briefly now about 2 recent legal actions that Nigeria took in order to further drive this improvement in the business environment. The first one is the Finance Act, which reviewed the tax obligation, in particular for small and medium companies, to give those companies a greater opportunity of survival. It reviewed, stamp duties, it reviewed, customs duties, but in particular, it's the tax burden on small and medium companies, which is part of the complaints, that they often make about their capacity to survive, in particular, the difficult years of infancy when a business starts. Cama 2020, which is the particular focus of today's discussion, we believe will in many ways also change the investment landscape. The provision for single member or single shareholder for private companies, the replacement of the authorized share capital with a minimum, the exemption from appointing auditors, the provision for electronic filing, electronic share transfers and electronic meetings, the reduction of filing fees, the exemption from the appointment of company secretaries, the enhancement of minority shareholder protection rights, the business rescue provisions, and the introduction of a statement of compliance. We think these features of the new Cama, should help make it easier, for new companies to be birthed in Nigeria and for young companies in Nigeria to survive the difficulty that companies often face at the beginning of their lives. But we think there are other things that will also be useful for companies. So at NIPC, we have an online investment guide that allows investors who don't know very much about Nigeria but want to understand the market to access the market. And the technology that we use to design the online investors guide means that it is available in over 100 languages. So French investors who prefer to read in their own language can toggle a few screens on their computers and access the iGuide in their own language. We have a compendium of investment incentives that summarizes the investment incentives across Nigeria. And I'll highlight in particular, the provision for companies that undertake research and development or commercialization in Nigeria. The deduction that's available for them for part of their expenditure on R&D, the provision for companies who invest in rural areas, for them to claw back some of the amounts that they invested in providing facilities where government had none. For companies who operate in export processing zones, and one of the popular ones we find is the Pioneer Status Incentive, which grants companies who operate in pioneer activities a 3 to 5 year company income tax holiday. But we also find that many don't have a full grasp of the diversity of Nigeria and the investment opportunities that exist from the north to the south, from the east to the west, and across the various states in Nigeria. So we have a book of states that helps us to translate for the 36 states in Nigeria, their competitive advantages and the investment opportunities bring, so that investors can better understand how Anambra is different from Plateau, how Kaduna is different from Edo, and the investment opportunities that abound across them. For a legal audience, I think it is also useful to point that we looked at the reform of Nigeria's international investment agreements with the aim of ensuring that we can attract investments that are responsible, investments that are inclusive, investments that are balanced, and investments that are sustainable. So at NIPC, we like to say that we want to attract RIBS investments, responsible, inclusive, balanced, and sustainable, to make sure that the quality of the investment agreements that Nigeria signs going forward reflects sustainable development objectives, but also to ensure that the agreements that we have signed in the past are modernized to bring them into line with Nigeria's global aspirations. France is one of 20 countries that were identified as strategically important to Nigeria for investment promotion. So France is one of 20 countries at NIPC that we assign specific desk officers to to help ensure a active engagement between the country and Nigeria, and to help ensure a single point of contact for inquiries, from nationals of France in resolving issues in particular. My colleague Wange Dia is the country desk officer for France, and will be available to support or provide assist, particular with French investors accessing Nigeria. The agency I work for, NIPC, was created to encourage, promote, and coordinate investments in Nigeria and serves 4 principal functions. The first is to project an attractive image for Nigeria as an investment destination. The second is to promote investment in Nigeria, whether they're from Nigerians or non-Nigerians. The third is to facilitate investments by providing support services to new and existing investors, and in particular to provide matchmaking between investors and government agencies. The fourth aspect of our mandate is policy advocacy, where we initiate or we support measures that are aimed at enhancing Nigeria's investment climate. We understand that investors can have difficulty in accessing the Nigerian market, and we have an OSIC lab which was designed as a facilitation mechanism to bring investors and various government agencies that they may require resolution from into a single room for the resolution of any challenges that they may have. The obligation in the NIPC Act is for investors to register with NIPC where foreign investment may come into their company. It's not that foreign investment exists already, but that foreign investment is possible. So in my own view, any company that is participating in a sector that is not on the negative list is subject to registration with NIPC. But the NIPC Act carries protections for investors, protection from expropriation, that no Nigerian government will take over their assets, unconditional transferability of funds, provision for dispute resolution, and the application of the provisions of the bilateral investment treaty where there's any dispute. I thank you all for the opportunity to speak, to you today. I look forward to the discussions on Cama. My name is Yewande Sadiku. I'm the Executive Secretary and CEO of Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Yewande Sadiku. Miss Yewande Sadiku, the CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. Thank you very much for that robust information you gave to us this morning, talking about the role of the federal government in making the business climate easy for foreign investors, of course, even the investors that are currently here, to be able to thrive as far as the Nigerian environment is concerned. You mentioned that there are 2 laws that have been put in place, talking about the finance bill that came with the approval of the 2020 budget, and of course, the Company and Allied Matters Act. And a lot of our analysts have said that this act would promote the ease of doing business drive currently in Nigeria. And of course, your own commission is also doing a lot as far as promotion of foreign direct investment in Nigeria, and ensuring, like you mentioned, that their businesses are not taken over by the government. That's protection of investment even in Nigeria. So thank you very much for also reiterating that point, and we caught that, and it's very, very handy for us, especially the French nationals that are connected to this event. And thank you very much for using the France and the Nigerian flag for the presentation this morning. It's very beautiful. So we'll go straight to our panel discussion. I'm sure we're going to have 1 or 2 questions for you, Madam Yewande Sadiku, by our participants in the course of our discussion this morning. So we'll go straight to our panel discussion without more to do. And then we'll be having Mr. Davis Ndutu, partner Aelex, Agbolo Aje Atinuke, senior manager tax department over at Deloitte and Touche, Mr. Michael Ango, which is the associate director Anderson Tax Nigeria, and then Peter Owonfia, which is the tax partner tax and regulatory service over at Mazars Nigeria. So we'll have a robust in terms of their experience for our panelists this morning. So I'll start with Agbolo Aje Atinuke. if you look at the current Company and Allied Matters Act, you are the senior manager, tax department of our Deloitte and Touche, right? What are the financial matters and reporting obligations of the new act? Can you take us through that in just a few minutes, please?
Thank you very much. So I'd like to say it was a pleasure listening to Ms. Sadiko now, and the impact that Cama 2020 would have on the business environment is unquantifiable. So because Cama is the only legislation, or well, the most important legislation that starts with the business from the ideation stage to the setup, to how you take out money, how you eventually sell, and all of that. And something that is as important as Cama itself, that stays with the business from inception to conclusion, is financial reporting. So it's a question of what is the essence of your business if you do not have finances. Finances ensures that you understand the health of the business. You understand that you can access metrics, you can look at the trends, what have you been doing. Stakeholders can also rely on the financial reporting. So stakeholders are the business owners, investors, potential investors, government, managers of the business, and employees, because they want to know the entity they are working for would not just up and collapse the other day. So in this requirement, on this basis, Cama is very instructive, and it provides that all business entities should have financials. So you should have a record of your financials from on a day-to-day basis. So starting from a company is obliged to have financial reporting that should be fair. So the directors are obliged to prepare financial statements that should show a fair and robust system of their operations. Same with limited liability partnerships, same with partners, partnership and business names, even companies limited by guarantee and incorporated trusts. All entities, whether or not even business focused, are entitled or required or be obliged to have financial statements and have financial reporting. In doing this, Cama has given some examples of what should be, and they have said, okay, the accounting that should be followed for companies particularly should be what has been recommended by the Financial Reporting Council, and Cama itself gave some recommendations. But ultimately, whether it is Cama, whether it is the International Financial Reporting Standards that the FRC has recommended, ultimately what the director should seek to uphold is to show that the company's financials are fair to anybody that's looking at it. Same thing goes with limited liability partnerships and all of that. So in addition to the financial obligations, there is the audit obligation. So because the companies and the directors prepare based on their own perspective, to ensure reliability, we rely on auditors, third parties, to verify what has been done or what has not been done, to ensure that the directors are in line with the provisions of the Act and the provisions of the Financial Reporting Council Act. So in this case, you would have auditors for companies based on the version of Cama that we have now. We don't have the gazetted one, but companies, limited liability companies are meant to audit their accounts. Limited liability partnerships are meant to audit their accounts. Incorporated trusts are meant to audit their accounts, so, as the case may be. And one thing that has come, as Ms. Sadiko mentioned, is that as part of the ease of doing business, there's an exemption for small companies from auditing. So small companies, there are companies that have turnover of about 120 million, below 120 million, have less than 60 million in net assets. 51% of the shareholders or directors are shareholders, and it's not there's no foreign shareholder. Pretty much that's what it is. And this type of companies are exempt from audit. While it's a good initiative because it reduces the impact or the costs of appointing auditors and the cost of doing business generally for the companies. But I think there should be a balance, especially for Nigeria. So it's what has been happening in some climes in the UK and France and a lot in Europe and America. There are a lot of countries that have this audit exemption for small companies. But Nigeria, I think we're still in a peculiar stage. And if we're going to have it, we may have like a balance to say, okay, if you're going to have this, there should be some verification. So I can say that in some jurisdiction, they would have that, okay, shareholders that have like 10% could demand for an audit. So like in the UK, they could demand for an audit. And in the UK too, if you have more than 50 employees, because that's 50 livelihoods, depending on that company, you should have a third party verify that what the directors are saying is actually it is what it is. Then we have in France, I know that has changed a bit now, but when they started, they had a third party, or like there should be a legal verification of what your turnover is and all of that. So because if you're saying there's no audit, there's no third party.
I think we're using Atinuke a bit, I think because of our internet connectivity. It's raining here in Lagos. Atinuke, are you?
Verify. It's just the company.
Okay.
I'm going ahead. So it's not really verifiable in that respect to be audited, because with the audit.
Okay, Miss Atinuke's internet might be giving us a bit of challenge, so I'm just going to.
The access to find uses instances, and I'm sure as we'll discuss later, there's a discrepancy between the small companies under. Hello?
Atinuke?
The tax laws as what constitutes. Hello?
Okay, hold on, please. Can you hold on? I think your internet might be having one or two challenges, please.
Okay.
But of course, we have gotten your point. You have mentioned that. Okay, please go on and wrap up. Go on and wrap up quickly. I think we can hear you now.
So as I was saying, it's beneficial. So while we have the exemption, companies should actually deep dive. That books would have more credibility if it was audited and a whole lot of that. So Cama is a fantastic legislation that has come. It couldn't have come at a better time. It has fixed some issues, and it has dealt with a lot of considerations I would have as a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Atinuke, for that robust. Though your internet was at some point in time, definitely it's expected with this online platforms. It's not unexpected. Thank you very much for your robust and presentation on the financial aspects of the new Cama Act. So a lot of people have been waiting to talk about the issue of tax and how it affects and how that has made and the provisions in the new Cama has made on making the issue of taxation easy for businesses. Addressing the issue of double taxation, for example, we understand the double taxation treaty between Nigeria and France and other European countries, but of course, not all countries around the world and all of that. So, Mr. Peter Onwofia, a partner of Tax and Regulatory Service, Mazars, please, what are the tax implications arising from the changes in the new Cama?
Thank you very much, Umaru, for having me as one of the panelists. First of all, I would want to say that the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020 is one of the major achievements of the present administration of President Muhammadu Buhari in terms of legislations. As you may be aware, the previous Cama we had was enacted in 1990. That's about 3 decades ago. A lot has changed between then and now, both in terms of how businesses operate and the economic direction of the country. I would also want to congratulate the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council for stimulating these reforms. Just for the record, Cama 2020 is not an amendment of the old Cama. It is entirely an enactment of a new company law, a new law that has brought Nigeria up to speed with the realities of the present day world. Though the Cama is not a taxing legislation, because we would be wondering why are we talking about tax when we are discussing the Companies and Allied Matters Act. However, Cama sets up the framework for business operations in Nigeria, and in consequence, this can affect the tax status of businesses. In terms of tax, not a lot is impacted by the new Cama, I would say. Earlier this year, we had the president assent to the Finance Act 2019, and the Finance Act 2019 amended about 7 tax laws in Nigeria, and this amendment had a significant impact on businesses and taxpayers in Nigeria, especially SMEs. Okay, so let's get straight to the very few things that has been affected or that has been that would be changed as a result of the Cama 2020 in terms of our existing tax laws. Let's look at stamp duties. Nothing would change in stamp duties, even though the new Cama has introduced electronic transfer of shares. One would think, so we don't get it mixed up, even though the Stamp Duties Act expects duties to apply on electronic transfers, but clearly in the Stamp Duties Act, it exempts transfer of shares from the application of stamp duties, well, except in pre-incorporation settings where the stamp duties would apply at 0.75%. Moving on from there, we have this special section, Section 394, that has defined a small company in the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020. We have to be very careful about that. When Isota Atinike was speaking, she said there are a few discrepancies between the tax law and the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020. Because with Finance Act 2019, there was a definition of small companies that came with that Finance Act. Small companies were defined as companies who have turnovers of 25 million naira and below. And whereas in the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, Section 394 has defined small companies as companies with turnover not more than 120 million naira and net assets not exceeding 60 million naira. That is the definition of small companies with the new Companies and Allied Matters Act. Now, for me, 120 million naira is a more realistic revenue threshold when compared with the 25 million naira threshold in the tax law. That's the one in the Finance Act 2019, because 120 million would take a lot of companies who are still trying to find their feet in the economic space in Nigeria, and it gives room for, gives a bigger umbrella that accommodates lots of companies who are still trying to find their feet in the economic space. Obviously, the other conditions that one has to fulfill to be classified as a small company with the Companies and Allied Matters Act, etc. has mentioned them, not having an alien member and then not having a government member as part of the shareholders for companies who have shares. In the Companies and Allied Matters Act, let me speak on the little discrepancy, the effect of this discrepancy of categorizing small companies as companies with 120 million naira threshold as against what we have in the Finance Act. Because the Cama 2020 has come to exempt small companies from appointing auditors, statutory auditors, to audit their financial statements. And essentially, it has also allowed them to file a kind of modified financial statement, just a kind of extract. So this is basically to reduce the cost burden as associated with appointing auditors and remunerating auditors and doing all these filings, annual return filings. However, the Finance Act 2019, though it exempts companies with a revenue threshold of 25 million naira from payment of income taxes, it did not exempt them from filing annual returns. Section 55 of the Companies Income Tax Act specifically mandates all companies in Nigeria to file annual returns at the end of a financial year. Companies, even though they are exempt from taxes, even though they're exempt from incorporation, they are required to file their annual returns. And subsection 1A of the Section 55 of the Companies Income Tax Act requires that a complete self-assessment returns would have in it essentially an audited financial statement coupled with a tax computation, capital allowance, and all the relevant schedules and self-assessment forms. Now, the problem is, the Cama 2020 is trying to reduce the burden. Some companies, would go, oh yeah, I'm exempted from appointing auditors, but then you need to also file returns with the tax authority. So essentially, the Finance Act 2019 has watered down the intention of Cama 2020, the intention of reducing the burden on taxpayers or on companies in Nigeria. So I would quickly recommend that the tax authority and the National Assembly should swing into action towards amending our tax laws in line with Cama 2020. I would say that a revenue threshold of 120 million is a better thing to do. And also, if the Companies Income Tax Act would also come up with a clause that would exempt small companies from filing audited financial statement and not just exempt them from payments of taxes. We also have another discrepancy from this definition of
Mr. Peter, sorry, thank you very much. You have crossed your time threshold at the same time. But thank you very much for that, your robust, the whole thing you brought to us this morning. It's very beautiful, talking about the discrepancy between the Finance Act 2019 and the Cama 2020, especially for small businesses. And if you look at another aspect of it is the filing of returns through electronic means. I think the Company and Allied Matters Act made provisions for the use of technology in filing returns, even at the corporate governance level that Mr. Michael Angle will be talking about later. How do you see the role of technology? Where does it come in making all of this easy in the area of finance, filing of tax returns, or in fact even filing of audited reports and the rest of them? So I will come back to Atinuke and let me hear your opinion on that. The role of technology in the new Finance Act, in the new Cama 2020.
No problem. So the role of technology, I think, as my co-panelist mentioned, Cama seeks to bring us to the world and to build up to speed in terms of technology. So the role of electronic filing, holding virtual meetings, and all of that is a welcome development. It will make activities easier. So, for example, if you were to file under the old act, you would need a document with wet ink, and you would have directors scattered all over the world. So you'd have to type the same document. Oh, today it has gone to UK, another to France, and it goes on and on. But now we can have e-signatures, and it will be acceptable in certain instances. Also, we can have virtual meetings, and it makes life easy. Even some companies, like small companies and single shareholders companies, are not obliged to have AGMs, annual general meetings. So they could just have, they are not obliged. So it could just be any decision that they have made will be deemed to be the annual general meeting if communicated to the board. So these are some of the things that has come, and we cannot overemphasize the benefits of technology. Another one is where we have filing and keeping of records. So you can have, so there's requirement to have hard copy documents, and at the same time, you could have soft copy kept in your records for 6 years. So you can have hard copy for the year, particularly in a place, but you can have for 6 year records, the mandatory period. You can have it on the systems, and that goes on and on like that. So it's.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. In fact, thank you for clearing that. So I'll go to Mr. Davis Noturu, which is our partner over at Aelex, to the partner for today's event. Anyway, so now you're going to talk about something a bit robust, and then you have to key it into the ease of doing business here in Nigeria. So you will have to highlight the elements of company formation under the new act and how it plays into the federal government's ease of doing business agenda. Company formation under the new act. Mr. Davis Noturu, please.
All right, thank you, Moses. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Sadiq. I've always been a fan of yours. Great to have you here. Good morning, the Consul General. I sit on existing protocols. Yeah, because we're all sitting. So when it comes to company formation, I guess a few of my co-panelists have touched on some things which generally tend to refer to ease of doing business when it comes to liaising with the Corporate Affairs Commission and, in fact, setting up your company in Nigeria. What has been referenced is the issue of electronic signature. Now, I know that for a lot of practitioners and a lot of businesses in Nigeria, the fact that wet ink has been part of our jurisprudence, with a requirement that CAC will not receive your documents except they see wet ink on your document, has led to a lot of heartaches and business disruptions. It happens on a regular basis, you know. So the fact that now electronic signatures are now countenanced as much as you could have with your wet ink signature means that if you scan the documents, if you upload them, whether in France, whether in the United States or America, whether in the UK, anybody can sign and send it back. This takes away the stress of having to courier documents to different parts of the world, people having to sit down in different places. So imagine if you're trying to set up the company with about 10 shareholders, then everybody needs to start signing, and then it's if I'm thinking about it now, one wonders how we've been able to survive doing business that way in this decade. So that in itself takes away a lot of stress and a lot of time, and makes the ease of doing business very evident. A lot of things. I think related to that is also electronic filings, which again has been referenced by some of the panelists. Now, you can now have electronic share transfers. Distribution of share transfers, for instance, can be done electronically and be countenanced by the CAC. Another issue, which may not necessarily deal with formation, but it is also dealing with the e-space as well, is the issue of notices. Now, for most of us, again, who may be serving as company secretary or having the involvement with scheduling of meetings, the fact that hard copy of notices need to be dispatched sometimes, and then some directors or shareholders will say they did not get those notices, and then somebody goes to court and seeks to invalidate those meetings because he did not get the notice of the meeting. There may be some respite on that, because Cama now makes provisions for electronic notices as well, which can be sent by email. So that really means that I can email you the notice, and then it gets to you, and there will be no challenge around that. Very importantly, around company formation is when it comes to companies limited by guarantee. For anybody who has been involved in this process, and trust me, I'm involved in quite a few right now where arguably my reputation is at stake. When the documents get to the AG's office, you could probably be spinning your wheels there for 3 to 4 months, perhaps sometimes 6 months. Personal experience that I have had was that after it remained in the AG's office for about 6 months, the client said, you know what, let's just incorporate a company limited by shares, because they couldn't understand how somebody that seeks to carry out charitable objectives and has donors and sponsors that are ready to give money would probably have to wait for an inordinate, in fact, for a timeline that nobody pretty much understands. Now, what Cama has done is that it now creates the window for you where after the period of time, 30 days, there is no response from the AG's office. You can publish in the newspapers 3 national dailies circulated for about 28 days. And where there are no objections to that, you can pretty much proceed with incorporating your company limited by guarantee through CAC, which I think is a very laudable and very, very, very interesting provision that definitely makes for ease of doing business. I think another thing that I would also want to touch on is the striking out of defunct companies. So of course, Cama makes a lot of provisions for business rescue, which wasn't there before. Now there are some provisions there that people have raised a few flack about, especially maybe it's around the issue of having insolvency practitioners that are registered with BRIPAN and all of that. But I think the fact that if you have a company that you have set up and hasn't done business, you can simply pass a special resolution, make an application to CAC, and have that company struck off from the register. This is a lot easier than having to go through members' voluntary winding up, and again, which takes quite some time. Probably takes you an average of about 6 to 9 months to wind up a company that hasn't done any business, but you simply want to wind it up. You would spend money engaging the liquidator, drawing up the different notices, publishing in the papers, gazetting, and all of that, sending to CAC. It will remain there for a few months, then come back. Meanwhile, that just makes for a lot of stress. There's no ease of doing business around that. So I think that provision as well is very laudable and will make a company that is set up probably for a few months and seeks to just simply wind up, take out those provisions and wind up the company pretty simply related to setting up as well. Sorry, this is the last. Yeah,
okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Moses. I wanted to just mention the issue of common seal because for a lot of us too who are in corporate commercial practice, there's always that issue of when you want to file and then CAC may flag it and say that there's no seal, from a company. Common seal is no longer a requirement again. So regardless of whichever country the foreign company is domiciled, you no longer require a common seal for the purposes of formation. Thank you. I think I'll stop there. Of course, there's a lot, but that probably says it.
Of course. Definitely. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis, too, partner over at Aelex. And you have really mentioned a lot as far as a company formation is concerned. And one thing I have listened to from Atinuke, from Peter, and from yourself is that this new act makes business easy from various aspects, various angles already, financing to tax, of course, even to company formation. And which is good. Apart from the fact that Mr. Peter mentioned a little contradiction between the Finance Act of 2019 and the Cama of 2020. But of course, we'll be wrapping up this event by 11:20. So I'll quickly go straight to Mr. Michael Ango now because we have a lot of questions that our participants are trying to ask already. And please, for our participants, if you want to ask a question, you don't need to raise up your hand. Raising up your hand means that I have to make you ask your question via speaking. You can just go to the Q&A aspect on your mobile device, and then you can drop your question from there. So you don't have to raise up. A lot of people are raising up their hands, and we can't be able to allow you to come in and speak. We just read your questions from where we are. And also from Facebook, I think they say, of course, from Facebook is just to drop a comment. It's with the event is live on Facebook. So we'll go straight to Mr. Michael Ango. Mr. Michael Ango is the Associate Director over at Anderson Tax. And Mr. Michael, please, are you there?
Right here.
Oh, great. So please, what is the corporate governance protocols under the Company and Allied Matters Act 2020? Please, let's look at the corporate governance side of it. Of course, that's one very robust angle. So you have just the floor now, please. Please turn on your video so we can see you at the same time.
I think you have to turn me on.
Okay, I think you can now. Go ahead, please.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, participants, for joining us today. I like to answer these questions. I like to start from what I call a philosophical view of legislation. So I think every legislation has a driving philosophy. There's a reason why the parliament enacts a legislation. And so for the Cama, I think the overriding philosophy of Cama 2020 is that it is a legislation that is aimed at enhancing the ease of doing business. And so that is the general philosophy of the legislation. And so if you take it from there, the next thing to say is that, government or legislature also adopted an approach that I favor when it comes to legislation, which is a repeal, especially for a legislation like Cama, which is 30 years old. It has about 600 sections. So what we've seen previously is that when you make amendments to such legislation and you amend a section here and a section there, you then tend to model up things. But what we've seen in this regard here is that there's been a wholesale repeal and reenactment of the act, which again tells you that, there was an idea that, look, what we had previously was not fit for purpose, and we needed to put together a document that will speak to the issues, the contemporary issues. But one challenge with the Cama, and I'll get to your question, is the length of the document or the act. So legislation these days tend to be shorter, concise, and more straight to the point. But what we've had is a legislation that went and exceeded the previous legislation by about 158 sections. So the old Cama had 612, the new Cama had 870 sections. It is a tough job for anyone. Not the best of lawyers will sit down and read 870 sections. I did a little research, and I found out that actually, in comparison to the UK Companies Act, it is a short legislation because the UK's Companies Act has 1,300 sections. Then I went to Ghana next door. and I discovered that their own legislation had, I think, 387. So when I took the average, of course, it still came to about 800 and something. But then in SA, they had 225 sections. Why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because when you talk about corporate governance, the most important thing about corporate governance in any institution is the ability to pick out what your obligations are and what you should do. The problem with the Cama is that it has too much detail. And so by the time you begin to distill what your corporate governance obligations are in this act, you will get tired. But let's leave it at that. So yes, we start from the very basic ones, which is that, okay, new Cama says, now you can have single shareholders, now you can have single directors. I think in terms of whether this will help companies to do business better or whether it will help in corporate governance, I think the jury is out. The reality is that I do not think that it is about the number of directors or the number of shareholders you have in a company that will enhance the ease of doing business. I think it is all about how the regulator and how the processes involved in the regulation of the businesses help them to comply or not comply. Okay, you have provisions, for example, that says an individual cannot be a director in more than 5 public companies. To be honest, I don't know what that particular stipulation seeks to achieve. Public companies, as we all know, are more regulated than private companies. So the directorship of a public company is out there. You know, it's on the stock exchange. You can find it in the audited accounts and all of that. So I really don't know why, you know, you want to limit the number of companies in which a director can be present as if it's in a public company. But having said that, you know, there are also very important things that have been introduced. For example, the issue of virtual AGMs, that's a fantastic one. And to think that this bill was already before Parliament prior to COVID-19 suggests to me that our Parliament is you know, beginning to be forward thinking. So yes, we know that COVID now has made everyone to sit at home. And so imagine that you have a company now and you can't go and hold your AGMs. That has been sorted out now. You can have your virtual AGMs. People have talked about how you can also have, you know, virtual notices and e-signatures and all of that. These are all issues that impact not just ease of doing business, but they also enhance the ability to, you know, comply, and they also enhance your management and the corporate governance of the companies. But like I said, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we can sit down and discuss all of the details in the Cama. We can point out all of the sections. I've written all of them out, you know, issue of, you know, significant control. If you have significant control in a company, you must inform Cama within 7 days of getting significant control. I think for private companies, significant control is defined as 5% of shareholding or voting rights. And then for public companies, there's a threshold there. But the reality at the end of the day is that all of this rests on the Corporate Affairs Commission. It rests on, you know, agencies like the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. How quickly do you respond to business investors? How quickly can people put in their, you know, applications and get them out? How quickly can people serve you notices and get responses back from you? So these are the real issues that I think we should be discussing. You know, the legislation is a piece of paper, but the people who implement the legislation are more important than the legislation. We have lovely laws in Nigeria, no doubt about it, but how do we implement those laws? So for me, what I will say is that in terms of the corporate governance provisions in the Cama 2020, good job. I'll give a pass mark. I'm very stingy with marks, but I'll give 7 over 10 or probably 8, you know. Yeah, I had wanted to be an academic before I found myself in consulting. So, but anyway, but again, like I said, so it's not so much about what you have in the laws, but how you implement the laws. And I think that what I will advise the CSE to do is really to find a way, whether by use of infographics, whether by use of frequently asked questions, to distill this law. I haven't read the 870 sections. You don't expect me, you know, to sit down and read each of these sections. So what typically happens is that when an issue occurs, you then go and scramble and you start looking for where the answer to your question is. But what I'll advise the CSE to do is to begin to distill these issues and then begin to, you know, whether send out articles, infographics, frequently asked questions so that people can begin to understand what their obligations are. Let me quickly touch on something, the issue of small companies. I beg to disagree with one of the panelists who said that he prefers the 120 million over and above the 25 million in the SITA. I think we have to be conscious of the economy in which we are operating. 120 million naira is not a small company by any means. How many Nigerian companies have a turnover of 120 million? 120 million means that you're grossing at least 10 million naira monthly. So yes, maybe the supermarkets, maybe the restaurants and the hotels, but a normal guy who does business, I'm not sure that people will have significant turnover of 10 million averagely monthly to meet the 120 threshold. So I think the 25 million might be too low, but I think it's realistic. It's more realistic in terms of the economy in which we operate. But it's important also that all these conversations are had. And I'll say something. Look, there's no problem or no challenge in saying, look, there are certain issues that need to be amended. If we need to go back to Parliament in the next 6 months, if we need to go back next year to say, look, over the course of the last 1 year, we've tried to operate this new act. We found certain challenges in it. We don't need to wait 30 years. Okay, we don't need to wait 30 years. We can do this. If even it means doing this every 6 months, it's good and fine. The most important thing, like I said, give people confidence and to ensure that people are able to do business in a very conducive atmosphere, like the AGMs that you and I can now hold in our homes, like the notices we can send out electronically. Those are excellent provisions, and we give kudos to Parliament and to CAC for all of that.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Angle, for that robust analysis you have given to the corporate governance side of the things. And when we organized this event, we brought, as we're talking to you now, we have representatives from the Corporate Affairs Commission, from the VR's angle, and from FRS also. I can see they are here. And of course, we have our gentlemen of the press that are picking most of these things we are saying, and definitely we're also going to send this information out, because that's the responsibility of the Chamber of Commerce. We have to ensure that the right people hear what we are talking about here, and of course they take decisions based on what they have heard today. It's not just about talking; it's to ensure that we send information to the people that need to hear what they are supposed to hear. So I would quickly go to Ms. Yewande Sadiku. Ms. Yewande Sadiku, you have heard all what the panelists have said, and from the various aspects of the act, how it helps the federal government's agenda in the ease of doing business, from the finance to the corporate governance to the tax. Like what Mr. Michael Angle said, the robustness of the document can also pose a problem in terms of course, articulating such robust documents and the rest of them. So I'll just give you like 2 minutes to just, just say one or two things about in reaction to what the panelists have said.
Okay, thank you. I think it's been a useful discussion, and I have to say I've enjoyed everybody's contributions. Diverse and robust, like the Cama. And it is true that it is a big document. I moaned to somebody the other day that I thought I had mastered Cama. I mean, the old Cama was around for 30 years. And in the work I did in corporate finance, I came to know it. Now I have to read this law exactly as Michael said. But the reality is that when it takes as long as it has taken to review this Cama, you may not get it 100% right. Does it make life easier for small companies? The answer is a resounding yes. We can be arguing about whether the threshold for small companies is too high. That is a better argument than saying that the threshold for small companies is too low. So there are companies that Michael believes should be large, that will fit the definition of small companies. In theory, it should make life easier for them. But it comments about improvements in governance, in corporate governance in particular, because good corporate governance helps companies generally to survive. I agree that it is useful, that you cannot comply if you do not know what the compliance obligations are. If it is too broad, if it is all over the place, it may be difficult. But I think overwhelmingly, the comments that have been made suggest that the market has received Cama well. It is not perfect, and I agree with the principle of running it for a year or so and going back to the House, to the National Assembly, with amendments that need to be made to make it even more suitable. But it is certainly light years ahead of what we had before.
Well, thank you very, very much for that. We'll be wrapping up this event in the next 10 minutes. So we have a lot of questions, a lot of comments. People have been raising up their hands. They want to even talk to the panelists directly. We had to I've been putting down people's hands since this event has been going on. So I have a question from Sandra Umbago. She is the partner at Umbago and Co. She said, of course, I'm sure this issue has been highlighted. They say highlight the significant difference between the old and new acts, particularly with regard to company registration and post-incorporation management and reporting. I think one of the panelists have mentioned that already. Maybe you can stress that later. I will go to the next question. Mr. Oladimeji Agbolade from Sanofi, he's the external affairs director. He said, what are the legal implications and pecuniary liabilities for a corporate entity which is working, collaborating, or in partnership with an NGO who is not in compliance with the provisions of the new Cama? I'll repeat that question again because I want a proper answer for this question. He said, what are the legal implications for a corporate entity which is working, collaborating, or in partnership with an NGO who is not in compliance with the provisions of the new Cama? Okay, I think I will throw that to Atinuke from Deloitte. So hold on, I will go to the next question. So people are asking about the section 839 of the Act, which has to do with charity and religious organizations. I don't think it's our responsibility as a Chamber of Commerce to begin to talk about issues related to religious organizations. So I'm just going to skip. A lot of people have been throwing out questions back and forth. I will skip 839. I will go to what is next. Adegoke Kazim has asked, to the new Cama, whether a person can own a liability company or whether limited. Okay, he's asking about the issue of if the limited liability do not need audited reporting again. I think I would still throw that back to Mr. Davison to re-stress that point on filing of returns and of course audited reports. I will go to the next question. From Samuel Obaka, which is a partner at Salvators. He said, clarify the lacuna in the new law with regard to the status of charities. Okay, we're still going back to charities and NGO. I hope I can be able to skip all these questions. Okay, let me see if I can pick more questions from there. I just want to ask all the questions at once so that our panelists can just pick them. Okay, Uche is asking a question. He said, technology is good, but comes with other issues, i.e. cybercrime. Are there security issuance requirements? I believe we're not talking about a MES-CAN signature, but e-sign. That's from Uche. Olalode said, good morning, everyone. I really enjoyed the entire session, but I would like to know about the data privacy implications arising from the new Cama. Since most meetings are now virtual, what recommendations would be put in place to ensure that private information or data is not leaked out to anyone? Okay, that's a very good question. Now, Chidima is asking, please, can you shed more light on how the minimum share capital works in practice? Using another justification for comparison, if possible, how does it differ from authorized share capital? So the person that dealt with corporate governance, which is Mr. Michael, please, you can hold on to that question. More questions are still coming in. People are still raising up their hands. So I think because we have less than 10 minutes, I would just want us to deal with these issues one by one. I will start from Atinuke, please. Just in 2 minutes, the areas that I've mentioned that you should come on.
Okay. Thank you very much. So the question is around the liability of a company that is dealing with a non-governmental organization or a not-for-profit entity that is not complying with the law. So the liability would be determined largely by what the activities of the company itself, how involved it is in running the non-governmental organization, and how the knowledge of maybe the shareholders or members or directors
I think you might be having a problem with your internet. Okay.
Of the compliance of the NGO. So if
okay, I think the connectivity
going to the market. Hello.
Yeah, I think your connectivity is a bit bad. Why you'll be trying to sort that? I think I'll quickly go to Mr. Michael. Mr. Michael, please. The areas have been highlighted under corporate governance. Please, can you just react to them in less than a minute?
Hello.
Moses, so I didn't quite get the question that was asked, but I'll crave your indulgence to say that, you know, this is a knowledge sharing session, so we shouldn't shy away from any questions. Let us take on section 839. There's nothing, you know, there are no boundaries. Let's discuss it. It's the law.
We are a chamber
Very
of commerce.
quickly,
We're a chamber of commerce,
it's knowledge.
and
It's knowledge.
we focus
I'll
on
just take.
we focus on businesses and of course promoting.
Give me a minute.
Trans-Nigerian
Give me a
relationships.
minute. Just
Okay,
a
okay,
minute, please. Just a minute.
Go on.
It's very simple. There's no, you see, I think let's not make it mysterious. There's nothing mysterious about section 839. Incorporated trustees are registered by Cama. Cama can regulate the conduct of public companies, private companies, business names, and incorporated trustees, all forms of business organizations that are registered under Cama. What that section simply says is where there has been some misconduct or some bad behavior or some untoward action by the trustees, the CAC needs an order of court to take over the operations of the incorporated trustees for a period, appoint trustees to oversee it, and that is all. So there's nothing, you know, I know that we tend to want to create controversy where none exists. And people have said, oh, you know, CAC wants to take over churches and all of that. So it's not true. There's nothing wrong with that. It's there in the UK, you know, the Charities Act and all of that. These things happen. If you have an organization that is registered by a regulator and the law gives that regulator powers to oversee you, there are certain sanctions that the regulator can apply if need be, if you then engage in certain misconduct and all of that. So I think section 839 is very straight. What was the question again, please? If I can quickly address it.
While I get back to you, the question I want to ask you, we have less than 5 minutes to wrap up this discussion. So, Mr. Davidson, okay. Atinuke, are you back?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yes, I can hear you. Just wrap up what you were saying in less than 1 minute, please.
Yeah, so I was saying that it's going to be based largely on the involvement on the company and the extent of the non-compliance of the NGO. So if the company is aware and it has taken steps to participate in the non-compliance or maybe in like fraud or anything, then the obligations may go far and wide. So it largely depends on what they are doing and what the non-compliance relates to.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Davidson, please, let's get your comment.
Okay, well, yeah, so I know that the question was asked concerning audited accounts. So, well, I think it's very clear if you look at section 442, really, of Cama. So the company that is exempted is a small company. Of course, we've already said quite a bit about small company. Then where the company has not carried out any business since its incorporation is also exempted from filing its audited accounts. But this doesn't apply to banks or insurance companies. So I think that's pretty much straightforward. I would want to answer the question on cyber crimes. So if you look at section 17 of the Cyber Crimes Prohibition Act, already it provides for the kind of documents that can be signed with e-signatures anyway, and lists the exempted ones. Now, I think all the documents that are signed electronically at CAC, none of them would fall under those exempted ones. So I don't really see any issue around cyber crime with regards to e-signatures. Can people decide to forge electronic signatures? They can, just like any other signature anyway. So I don't see anything there. Concerning a question on data protection, again, just like you would have for any of your Zoom meetings or even this meeting, there's usually a password that you use to protect, people who can access your meetings. So by all means, if you're having a virtual meeting, make sure that you secure it by putting your cybersecurity policies in place and having secure passwords so that you don't get hacked. Those are my responses to those different questions I caught.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Mr. Peter, I don't know if you have one or two things to say with reference to the questions that have been asked. We are already wrapping up, please.
Right, thank you very much. Just to clarify, I didn't say that 120 million was so low. I only said it's more realistic compared to 5 million. Having said that, I agree with other comments made by Michael about section 839. I don't think there should be a lot of issue. and every other comment made by my co-panelist. I think the Cama 2020 is a very good one, a right step in the right direction, and I commend the National Assembly, the CAC, and the Presidential Enabling Business Development Council for this step. So that's my comment now.
Thank you very much to all our panelists. I don't know if the Consul General is still on, so just sorry, we cannot take all your questions today, but our sponsor for today's event, Aelex, will get your email addresses. They will contact you, and of course, any question you have to ask, please channel it down to Aelex. We have the professionals there. That is, of course, the benefit of running such a beautiful discussion. They are partners. They are from lawyers to auditors and the rest of them to get answers to your questions. So once again, Ms. Yewande Sadiku, the CEO of the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. I hope I don't make the mistake again. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Mr. Peter, the partner over at Mazars Nigeria, tax partner Mazars Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Mr. Michael Ango. Mr. Michael Ango, always a pleasure to have you. We were together in Abuja last year. We are here together again. Abuja last year was a physical event. Now we are doing this thing virtually. Thank you very much for always being with us. Mr. Davison Otsuru, partner over at Aelex. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And of course, Atinuke Agbolo Ajay, or the senior manager for Deloitte and Touche. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And of course, all our participants, we have over 100 people on the platform and on Facebook. So giving us a total number of close to 250 people that joined us this morning, the gentlemen of the press, and of course, even our regulators, FIRS, CAC, partners in other consulting firms, KPMG, PwC. We can all see all of you here lined up, raising your hands this morning to almost become the panelists for today's discussion. But of course, when next we have other meetings, we'll make you our panelists. Thank you very much for joining us. I believe it has been an engaging discourse on the 2020 Company and Allied Matters Act. And of course, one thing we have established today is that, yes, this act is in line with the federal government's drive on the ease of doing business in Nigeria. And on that note, merci beaucoup et à bientôt. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers, bye.